Hey, brand builder, Rory Vaden here. Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to this interview. We are so excited to bring you this information and wanted to let you know that, hey, there's no sales pitch coming from anything that we do. This is all our value add to you and the community. However, if you are somebody who is looking for specific strategies on how to build and monetize your personal brand, we would love to talk to you. And we offer a free call to everyone that's interested in getting to know us and is willing to give us a chance to get to know them and share a little bit about what we do. So if you're interested in taking us up on a free strategy call, you can do that at brandbuildersgroup.com/summit call. brandbuildersgroup.com/summit call. Hope to talk to you soon. On with the show.
John Ruhlin is one of my favorite dudes. He's one of my favorite guys. Like a real life friend. And there's several things that I love about John, which I'll tell you about. So I'll give you the officials first. So he's the founder and the author of Giftology. He's been featured in tons of major news outlets, Fox News, Forbes, Fast Company. He is also the number one performer historically all time at over 1.5 million sales reps for one of the world's most recognizable brands and direct sales companies. And you'll hear a little bit about that as we talk. And so he speaks at big corporate events, really about customer loyalty, about referrals without asking, about just kind of like creating connections and relationships and trust. And the reason I've asked him to come talk about it is, one, because his expertise is really brilliant and it's unique and it's very different from something you would hear someone talk about. But the other thing is, homeboy drinks his own Kool-Aid, and he has built a massive personal brand and continues to be like this rising star, I think, among influencers, because he does what he actually teaches people to do, which is always like my number one litmus test. And so anyways, John, welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast.
Roy, thanks for having me, man. I wish we were hanging out in your place in Tennessee, but this is the second best right now.
Totally. So, tell me first of all, what is Giftology? All right, so let's start there with like your normal expertise and why does it matter, and then we'll talk about how do we incorporate this as a part of our strategy to building, an influential brand.
Yeah, well, people don't necessarily care about gifting. Like nobody wakes up in the morning and says, man, I got to become a better gifter, but everybody cares about relationships. Every business rises and falls. Every brand rises and falls on relationships with clients and employees, partners, joint venture, event planners, you name it. And most people, if they're honest with themselves, they suck at showing gratitude and appreciation in a very meaningful way to those important people, whether it's at home to your significant other. Most people just aren't very good at that. And so the core of Giftology is really just a systematic marketing process, which makes it sound very calculated, but it's a recipe on how to stand out, be memorable. So if you want to drive access with people, if you want to drive referrals, there is a formula to it that's been really followed for thousands of years. And I think in our transactional Western culture, we forgot what those triggers are, what those things are. And there's been a lot of people that have done studies on it, Robert Cialdini with influence, and we're just tapping into the psychology of things and doing it in a way that's not manipulative, that in a way that really honors relationships and plays relationships for, everybody says they play the long game, but most people it's days, and we play the relationship game for decades.
Yeah. And so just to jump right in on this, like to give people a real life example of how serious you are about this, hopefully you don't mind me sharing, and if you do, I'm going to share it anyways.
Sure
You're a Brand Builders Group client, so we're proud to have had opportunity to team up with you because we believe in you. But the thing that you did that nobody has ever done or asked to do since you is you came to our house. You were one of our early clients, and we were doing stuff here, in the workroom at Vaden Villa. And you threw a party you were like, hey, can I throw a party while I'm at your house?
Yeah.
And so you invited, so tell people about this party, and like, I'm convinced that you had to have spent more on the party than you spent with us, or close to it, for
Yeah.
a one night party, as you did on the actual strategy. And now what I realize is you weren't really interested in our strategy. You were really just trying to rent our house. And
For what?
so now I got a 2-for-1 deal out of it. But now I understand. So like, tell us, like, just as that night, as an example, it was so powerful to me.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's so much noise right there. And a lot of times people will, they do the same dinners, ball games, rounds of golf. Like everybody it builds relationships the same way. And for us, like, I would rather do a once in a lifetime experience for a group of 5 people than to do a mediocre experience for 5,000 people. And that's what most people do. But they're like, hey, we throw a big party, the more the merrier. And it's like mid-tier, wine, mid-tier alcohol, low-tier food, like trinkets, and, a low-tier band. And so when I was like, man, I'm going to be with you. There's a lot of, this kind of like the Nashville Mafia in your area, like all these great influencers and people that are either friends or people that I would love to hang out with, not with an agenda, just to hang out with. And even people outside that are just looking for an excuse to hang out in Nashville. And I wanted to connect them to you because I wanted to build a relationship with you.
We got great relationships out of it. I mean, there were really awesome people there.
Yeah. So most people would have their dinner at Morton's or someplace like that. And, they're like, oh, $150 a head. And I'm like, what? If I'm going to throw an event, I want it to be something that people are talking about a decade later, because now, like, the story starts to transfer. Like, if you want to become known, you have to do a once in a lifetime, or I call it like a love bomb, like something that's like has ripple effects.
Bomb.
Yeah. Like most people shoot bullets. Like I want it to be an atomic bomb. And I was like, you have a beautiful house. What can we do that would be amazing? I'm like, everybody loves wine. And one of my friends is the first master sommelier ever in the US. There's only like 220 of these guys globally. And it's harder to get this certification than it is to become a doctor and a lawyer together. There's only 220 people. It's crazy. And so Eddie Osterland teaches people how to use food and wine as a competitive advantage. He calls it power entertainer. That's what his book is. And to get him to come in and speak, normally, like American Express will pay $25,000 for him to come in and orchestrate a food and wine experience. And then that's on top of the wine that you need to have that's unique, and the food that needs to pair with it. And so I'm like, Eddie's a good friend. I've opened up a bunch of doors for him. He's a client. And so we flew Eddie out to your house. We coordinated with a top caterer. We had Eddie reach out to his wholesale wine relationships to get some wine that nobody else would have access to. And because of that, Tucker Max and guys from Texas and other places said, I'll fly in just for 24 hours, Mark Tim, just to hang out and be a part of this gathering. And so rather than open it up for 200 people and have it just be okay, it was like, 22 people in the house.
Yeah.
Like, it was a very small group of people, but I would rather, here's my thing. I would rather spend $20,000 on one relationship that is like a Cameron Harold who, is literally like hit the 20 grand I've invested in him, which sounds crazy, over 10 years. That's not at one time, has turned into 7 figures. So it's a 50x ROI. People are, like brag about their 3x ROI on Facebook, which is fine on ads, but I'm like, the return on relationship, if you're willing to do it the right way, play the long game for decades, and do it with no strings attached, so there's no manipulation. Like Jeff Goins asked me afterwards, he's like, dude, you didn't ask me, there's no pitch. You just did that just because. And
and you didn't, and you haven't said this, and I just want to make sure people don't understand. So first of all, okay, so it's at our house, which you didn't have to rent, but you did pay us, our normal handsome fee for a private strategy session. So again, it was either rental free,
and it was worth it.
And you flew this master sommelier in from California?
Yes, La Jolla. Yep.
Bought all this wine, which was crazy, like amazing wine. Paid for this incredible caterer, like all this like great food. Renting tables and chairs, like renting all the stuff and people to come and clean up and all this. and and nobody got charged. You didn't, like, this was just a handful of people that you invited, and no, you didn't ask anyone to share. There wasn't like pass a basket. There wasn't like, hey, can you have me on my podcast? You're just going, like, when I want people to really grasp what's doing here. Cause it like 20 grand? Is that, I mean, it was maybe 10 grand. I mean, it was at least 5 grand,
Yeah,
probably 10, maybe even more than that.
it was more than that.
Yeah. So, and it wasn't like, hey, who can have me on their podcast or how much they want. It was just like dinner. It was a love bomb. There wasn't even, people didn't even know who you were. Like, some of the people didn't even know you were the one throwing the party. They were people I invited, and they thought I threw the party, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we spent 10 grand on this experience for you. But so the thing that blows my mind is to go, like, it's one thing to go, yeah, you should do this, but to witness it with my own eyes of, like, you going, this is like a big swing for the fence, but yet you're not actually swinging. There's no ask. It wasn't like, hey, I've got a business opportunity for y'all. It was just loving and friends, and people flew in for it. It was nuts. Yeah, that was how I met Tucker Max. I never met him. I mean, there were some people there that were incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing. I think in general, everybody says they're first class, best in class, world class. Everybody says they're A plus this, or they're A, they're bestseller of that. And I think that, look at your calendar and look at your pocketbook, and I'll tell you what your priorities are. And, for us, we make it, like, if you're a person of faith, you reinvest 10%, as a tithe back into your faith, into the church, because that's what God's called us to do, to multiply and to trust him. And I think that for me, like, you should be doing that with your relationships. You should be reinvesting a percentage of your profits, because if you're not reinvesting back in the people that allowed you to have a business or a opportunity anyway. And that's just silly. Like, why would you not take 10% of your profits to reinvest back into clients and employees and partners, and to keep them as a relationship, to grow them? And hopefully the secret sauce is that I've done this with enough people are like, John, how many sales reps do you have? And I'm like, I have thousands. And they're like, how do you afford thousands of sales reps? And I'm like, well, I take a percentage of my profits, I reinvest them back into guys like you or Cameron Harold or other guys that I couldn't afford you as a sales rep for $1 million. And yet, with being strategic with my generosity and my gratitude, and being thoughtful with it and doing it the right way, I get 1,000x ROI over time on the back end, because I have people like you and others that I could never afford advocating for me in the corners of the world I would never get access to. And that's, we've been doing that for 20 years. I started when I was 20. I just turned 40 last month. And people are like, where did you come from? Like, you're overnight success. I'm like, dude, I've been modeling this for 20 years. And now some of the seeds I planted a decade ago are bearing fruit.
Yeah. I mean, you were just on this virtual summit with Sarah Blakely and Dean Graziosi and Damon John that Pete Vargas put on. And it's like, your face is right there with, like, all of these incredible people. And it's just so awesome. It's that concept, return on relationship, is such a cool idea. But yeah, like, talk to me about the manipulation factor, because it's like, I really like the power of that, but also, not to misconstrue what you're saying, you're not actually measuring it. You're not actually tracking the referrals that come from somebody. You're not, it's not like a Facebook ad where you're actually going, yeah, how many leads came directly from this ad or that ad. This is like by faith.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there is strategy to it. What I would say is that you find out over time who's a giver, who's a taker, and who's a matcher. So Adam Grant's concept of there's givers, takers, and matchers. I tend to surround myself with guys like John Hall and you and John Rampton and Bob Glazer and Pete Vargas, guys that are givers, because I don't have to keep, like, those types of people. I call it the outgive effect. Like, everybody's trying to one up each other, but with generosity. And when you hang out and surround yourself with and pour most of your generosity into others that you know, whether they pay it back to you or they pay it forward, you know, like there's going to be a positive ripple effect from that. And so I do think that there are times where I'm like, you give a few times, you're like, gosh, that person's like taking and they're not generous and they're kind of a douchebag. I will pull back in certain areas because, and I'm not tracking referrals, but I'm seeing who they are as a person. I'm seeing what they're up to. I'm seeing how they respond to people. And so it's not that you're just like shooting shotguns of willy-nilly. Like we invited, 22 people to your house.
Yeah, you're not going to the bar and being like, drinks for everybody.
Hey, come on over. You got a pulse. So there is thought put into it, but the thing is that you're not like when you put strings attached or you have expectations after that somebody better have you on the show or better do this or do that. Like I think Robert Cialdini's proven it with enough research over 30 years that if you do nice things for people, like God's woven it into our DNA to want to reciprocate. Now, sometimes that plays out now. Sometimes they're in a position of power or timing a decade from now. And you don't know how that's going to play out. My original mentor, Paul, who is like this rainmaker of an attorney, he was incredible because he did this for 40 years. I saw him when he was 60 and I'm like, I want to be him when I'm 60. And he just did things naturally because that's who he was. And as a poor farm kid, I was like, I want to be Paul when I'm 60 and I'm 20 at the time. So I got 40 years to get there. And so there is strategy to it. It's not, there's strategy on the amount they're reinvesting. There's strategy in who you're targeting. But the kicker that where most people ruin it is with expectation and trying to give and then give and then immediately ask. And Vaynerchuk's talked about it for decades. It's jab, 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 right hook. It's not jab, right hook. It's give over and over again. Maybe you earn the right to ask after you've done it over and over and over again. But most people, they shortchange themselves and ruin the relationship by asking too quickly or with expectation.
I want to talk about time of when to give, actually, because I think this is one of the things that, like you've taken this concept and built a whole career out of it. The book, the concepts, your keynote is fantastic, right? I always joke on this show, like you're one of the people I actually refer to clients and stuff and tell people, hey, you should, because it's really, really quality, of just your story. One of the things that jumps out to me is the concept of when to gift. And you really opened my eyes to this. And so can you talk about like when's the wrong, call it the wrong time, or just like when do you recommend gifting and when do you not?
Yeah. So when we walk people through our process and step by step, most people want to start with what they're giving. And that's like the 7th step in the process. Timing is just as important, if not more important than what you're giving. And so most people, their whole focus is on what's cool and sexy. And what I tell people is, the timing, it has to be no ABC gifting. So no anniversaries, no birthdays, no Christmas. And really what that means is you're not giving gifts out of obligation or expectation. So if you take your wife, for example, if you only did gifts on, Valentine's Day, anniversary, birthday, Christmas, like those are table stakes. Like that just gets you at even. But
yeah, that's what you do to not get fired from your marriage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're not getting promoted. That's what you're doing to not get fired.
Exactly. Yeah. So with clients or referral centers or joint venture partners, like most people, it's like, hey, I have a launch coming up. I better send a gift a week before. That's a tit for tat. Oh, I just closed a big deal. I better give a gift. Well, they give you $1 million. Here's your $250 Starbucks gift card. Like it feels very transactional. And most people, if they're honest with themselves, they consider themselves a relationship person, not a transactional person. But most of the gifting that they do is it's Christmas. I need to send a gift. So I tell people it should be planned randomness. You should send gifts for 2 reasons. One is just because. And when you do that, you pick a time like, the middle of July, and you send out gifts to your top, say 20 relationships or top 200 relationships. Because you didn't tie it to any sort of transaction or deal or trigger, you send it just because. The other person, that's how people are like, John, you send all these knives. How do people not how does it not get old? And I'm like, well, when our clients send out knives to people, it's not tied to Christmas or a holiday or birthday. It's sent out, hey, I was just thinking of you. Would love to carve out some time to be with you, blah, blah, blah. So the person who receives it, even though there might be 200 of the same gift that went out, the person who gets it's like, I can't believe Rory was thinking about me. And so the timing makes it a surprise and delight. And so when we walk people through a process and lay out a plan, a relationship plan, everybody has a financial plan, a marketing plan, a health plan, an eating plan, workout plan. Nobody has a relationship plan. And one of the things is I'm like, here, you need to have 1 to 4 times a year that the other person you're sending the gift to is never not expecting it. And you're not asking them for anything. You're just sending it out as just because. The only other time I'll say that a gift makes sense is the asset and the commodity that we'll never get back is when you take somebody's time. Like that's the most precious asset. And yet most people are like, I want to pick your brain. Hey, I want to do this. I want to do that. It's like, you want to waste my time. And that could be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars an hour. So if somebody gives me 5 minutes of their time, I'll send them sometimes a $500 gift. And the other person, even a billionaire, I've had billionaires reach back out and say, John, your thoughtful note and your gift after I gave you 5 minutes was nicer than what some of my relationships that I do $10 million deals with has ever sent me. And now guess whose phone call they will take 6 months, 6 years from now? Mine, because I appreciated their time, their most valuable asset that most people waste. So the timing of surprising and delighting people, like when we did the thing at your house, it wasn't Christmas, it wasn't our anniversary, it was, I'm in town, I'm with my buddy Rory, let's do something fun. Like it wasn't tied to anything other than let's do something cool, let's be generous. I'm grateful that Rory is pouring into my team. We're all together. Why don't we celebrate? And I think that's where people are like, hey, I got to wait till a 50th anniversary before I throw a party for people. Or I got to wait till somebody leaves my company after 20 years to throw a party. Like that's so old school and idiotic. It makes no sense. Like let's be more proactive and find reasons out of the blue to love on people. And that's where people are like, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah, that is wild. That is the part. And it's like the timing is, a lot of times it's like, whether it's a $5 gift or a $5,000 gift, like Mary Kay used to have, my mom sold Mary Kay, and they used to have this saying, they were like a $5 gift, but a $50 bow. And they would say that as just like, it was a $5 gift card, but they would present it in this bag with like glitter on it and stand in front of the room. And it made people feel special. It was like, it's all about, making them feel appreciated, like you're saying. So how do you use this as like a business? Like you're using this to get keynotes or only as thank you gifts? Like in a business setting, what are you doing? And
it play out?
Yeah, like how does this play out in a, like you're trying to get clients or win clients or whatever?
Yeah. So we have clients of all sizes and shapes, and we have $500,000 authors, to Fortune 500 companies. But at the end of the day, people, when we spoke at Google, they're like, hey, John, does this work in technology? And I laughed. I'm like, are there human beings here? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, then it works. I don't care if you're a solopreneur that you did 100 grand last year, or whether you're Google, like if it involves human beings, it works. So one of the things that we take all of our clients, whether it's professional service firms, financial advisors, speakers, widget manufacturers, I'm like, let's do a 360-degree view of all of your relationships, your suppliers, your clients, your joint venture partners, your investors, your mentors, your board of directors, anybody that allows you to either have a business or that you need to build a relationship with in order to grow your business. So from a speaking perspective, most people, when they get hired, to do a keynote, 7 years ago, I was begging to speak for free. And we just did a deal in Australia with books and travel. It was an $85,000 keynote. So 7 years, we went from free to, with guys like you pouring into us and understanding things. But part of that reason that happened was I built relationships and poured into, I gift other speakers. I love on other speakers. And people are like, aren't those your competitors? I'm like, no, those are other people that are interacting with amazing stages. And if I do a great job and I love on those people and they bring me up in conversation, they become a sales rep for me. They have the tight relationship. The other people that we've done gifts for a long time, most people are like, oh, the CEO of the company that I'm speaking for, I got to send him or her a gift. And I spend as much, if not more, on the assistant and the event planner. I call it the inner circle. Why? Because the event planner oftentimes gets only the credit if the event goes bad. You know, it's oftentimes a person who's working their butt off. And
Yeah, they're the one doing all the work. They're actually the one doing all the work.
Yeah. So a lot of the events I speak on, I do these, I surprise the event planner with this $1,000 mug, like $1,000 for a mug. I'm like, it's like tells a person's whole life story. And I just gave one to a group called Forum 400, which is like all these top insurance brokers. And I gave it to the event planner. I'd never met her before, but I heard she was an amazing person of faith, and did the research to find out about her. And from the stage, I gave her this mug. And her name's Amy, and she came up like ugly crying in front of everybody, gave me a hug. And I didn't realize she actually works for an association management company, and they literally represent 1,000 associations. And she's become my biggest cheerleader and advocate because she was so blown away by how I treated her. Now, I didn't ask for anything. I didn't even know she worked for an association management company. I just knew she was working her butt off for this group. And I thought she was employed by the group. And so what I would say is that if you can take a inventory of all the people that are important to you and then go another layer deeper into their inner circle, you know, I started out when I was in college investing $500 a month in gifting. And that was a lot for a college kid at 20. That's $6,000 a year. This year, our gifting budget will approach $600,000 for the year, personally. 80%.
I think we should throw a $500,000 party at Vaden Villa. If that's the budget, we should do a $500,000 party at Vaden Villa. I'm just putting that out there. Just putting that out there.
This is rounding error. Leave $100,000 for tangible gifts and $500,000 for. Dude, we could do we could do a heck of a bash there.
We got to get past the COVID-19 thing though, because we got to have a bunch of people.
Yeah, well, I'm not afraid to push the envelope there, but that's another conversation. So what I'd say is 80% of your relationship building budget, or your marketing budget, or business dev budget, think about the people that are important to you, 360 view, who's more important than what you're giving. So identify those people, and then who's their spouse, who's their assistant or chief of staff, who's the event planner, who are their kids, who are their pets. That's where, when people are like, dude, you still send stupid knives? And I'm like, last time I checked, most people are married or have a significant other. Most people have a kitchen. Most people are foodies or cook or entertain. We're sending more knives than we ever have. Like when the New York Times interviewed us, they thought I was joking when I said the knives are our number one gift. And they're like, that was your college thing, right? And I'm like, we sell millions of dollars in knives because people still crave that practical, unique, out of the blue, something that includes their family. And so what I would say is focus on the event planners, focus on the people that are lower in stature, because oftentimes they're treated like crap. And if you can honor them and treat them with respect and treat them like a peer, that's how we landed the Orlando Magic as a big client. It was not because of the CEO. He made the decision to sign off on the first order, but it was the assistant, Cheyenne, who became my internal sales rep and helped us land our first 6-figure deal with an MBA team. It was the person below that I loved on for years, and not in a weird manipulative way. It was just honoring the relationship, and she went and became my internal sales advocate. So I would say, if you want to build a personal brand, realize that there's the influencer CEOs, those are great, but take care of the people around them in a way that's not weird or manipulative. And if you can do that consistently over time, those people will start to look out for you and start to open doors that you could never.
I mean, and this is just so true, because like, if somebody is nice to AJ, like they're in. They will, like, if they're mean to AJ, or worse, if they don't, it's like, it's worse to not acknowledge her. I mean, she's the CEO of she's the CEO of Brand Builders Group, but it's like, she decides where we go, what we do, who we spend time with, where I go, like, and she's a softie, right? So that's just so true. It's like, that is taking care of their inner circle, makes them feel special. And it's also, in a weird way, like you know, if it was like the CEO and the assistant, I think it actually makes the CEO feel good that somebody else is loving on their, you know, person.
Makes them feel like the hero. They're the king, they're the queen. And because of their hard work, other people around them are benefiting. Like any leader loves to see the people that they care about, their
Yeah.
kids, their spouse. Because oftentimes you feel guilty when, you know, like I travel away from my family and I'm at like Pebble Beach drinking, you know, nice bottles of wine, and my wife is taking care of our little ones and they like the flu. And anytime somebody can honor my wife or my assistant or my team or my kids, like I
Yeah.
feel I win too.
Yeah.
So it's such a simple concept, but
So
most people forget.
we have to wrap up here, but like this has worked so well for you. Like even, and I've known you now for I don't know how many years, but it's been many years, and to see how you're like this is, you know, advanced your own personal brand. Like you've always been great at business. You've always been moving tons of knives and like building relationships with people, but some years ago you were like, I'm going to become an author and like I'm going to become in this community, and like now here you are sharing the virtual stage with Damon John and Sarah Blakely and, you know, all these crazy people, um because of your relationship with Pete and how much Pete, you know, adores you and loves you. How much money, how do you figure out, like if you were gonna, you said it's a system, which is one of the things I also like, that even though you're not like measuring the ROI, there is a system here. And
Yeah.
so, you know, like you mentioned you had a budget. How do you figure out what the budget should be? Like, is it roughly a percentage of profit or percentage of sales, or like, or just as a, you know, starting point?
Yeah. So what I'd say is, you know, we perfected it over, you know, almost 20 years now. And it, you know, starting with the who, the relationships, the when, the why, all that kind of stuff. Like you got to map out and identify the pool of people first of who that is. In every business, some people it's 10 people, some people it's 10,000 people, but it's still just human beings. We charge a lot of money to walk people through that process, because that's the, if you don't get the foundation right of who you're going after and budgeting properly, like what you're going to send and all the other stuff like is meaningless. And so if your tribe wants to go download the entire process of what we charge thousands to do, if we do it, walk them through it personally, then go to giftalogysystem.com and download our entire, it's basically
Giftologysystem.com.
yeah,
Giftologysystem.com, all one word.
all one word, Giftology system. But the budgeting question, every company's different as far as what their margins are. In general, I don't care what somebody's revenue is, I care what profit is. And so, you know, sometimes these companies, mortgage companies, whatever else, like, oh, we did 40 billion in revenue last year, but we did 4 million in profit. I'm like, okay, let's work with a $4 million number, not the $40 billion. And so for us, it's a percentage of net profit or a percentage of gross profit. We're in the 15 to 20% realm. I think a good baseline is 10% of whatever your net profit is. So if you make $1,000 on a relationship, you know, you're reinvesting $100 back into them to show them, you know, that, hey, you know, you're thinking of them. Obviously, you're never going to send something to somebody that's a high level person that they couldn't go buy for themselves. So it's not about the item. It's about the thoughtfulness that goes into it. That's why the engraving and the personalization, that's why the handwritten note, that's why all the details around it. People will say, John, I've done Giftology and it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, did you follow the recipe? And they're like, well, I kind of did. And I'm like, it's like baking bread. Either if you don't put yeast in, you don't get bread. And so
Yeah.
people forget the little details around it and they think they're doing what we're doing, but really they're sending stuff from Amazon with a typed letter. And they're like, the person didn't even respond. I'm like, well, do you think you can automate relationships? Do you think something showing up from Amazon is going to work? Like that feels different than if it came from one human sent to another human. So the budgeting, you know,
So that's not in the plan. Don't send it from Amazon. If you
no,
order it from Amazon, send it to your house and then repackage it and then send it.
And people are like, well, that's a lot of
Good
work.
tip.
I'm like, well, yeah, that's why do you think our agency exists? Like if it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was
Yeah.
easy to be like, it's not that people don't know what to do. When they hear the recipe, they're like, that's it? And I'm like, yeah, that's all we do. Like we do this, and this. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound that hard. And I'm like, if you do it for one human, it's not. But if you want to do it for a dozen humans consistently, or if you want to do it for 2 dozen. And so the budgeting, figuring that out and saying, hey, If I make $1,000, I'm going to reinvest 100.
But 10% of net profit is 10%. A rough, like,
yeah, you can go higher than that. Like some of our clients are like, John, I'll invest 20%. Like I invest 18% in revenue and marketing expenses. Like if I can invest a percentage of profit back into my relationships and turn them into a referral source. So like, like these speakers are like, man, my average stage is, $12,000. Like I would gladly do $1,000 or $2,000 if it even turned into 3 years from now, another speaking deal or another consulting deal or another whatever. And so I think that's where people don't understand is they want the immediate, I invest $1, I immediately have to make the money. And they're not willing to build they're not willing to plant the acorn that becomes this massive oak tree over the course of 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years. Like they want to put the money in. And so the budgeting, I tell them, like, you don't have to spend all of your marketing dollars with Giftology, but if you take your entire pool of money of what you spend on building your business, just take a sliver of it and redirect it towards pouring back into all of your people, and do it for 3 years and do it with following the recipe, and come back to me and tell me it didn't pay the biggest dividends of anything that you've ever invested into. Because to me, the relationships are where, like, especially in a valley, we find out who has our back. We find out when we're backed into a corner. I know when I went through 2008 and almost lost the business, it was a handful of people that allowed me to survive. And I think that people forget that, like, we don't need 1,000. It's like, Tim Ferriss's concept, like, you don't need 10 million people, you need 1,000 true fans. And I think you even need less than that. Like if you have 10 or 20 or 30 people that are raving true fans, like actively loyal, you get those kind of people behind you. Like it's amazing what we can accomplish with a small handful of people that are in our army and really willing to go to bat for us.
There you have it, friends. Giftologysystem.com. This is John Ruhlin, author of Giftology. You can check out the book. Follow him online or go to giftologysystem.com. John, thank you for being here. Thank you for this fresh perspective. And thank you for making me feel like crap for how bad I am at gifting, as always, every time I talk to you. All right.
My pleasure.
All right. See ya.